break the mindset that says, if we wanted to do good, it's separate from making money.
Hi, welcome to the Blockchain for Humanity Fireside Chat. Today, we have Ashish Gadnis. He's the co-founder and CEO of BanQu.
And our vision is simple, right? 100 million people enabled out of poverty and $100 million in revenue.
He has been recognized for groundbreaking, for-profit and for-purpose innovation. We're going to hear much about this today. So on this second segment, we continue the interview to Ashish Gadnis, co-founder and CEO of BanQu. And now we are going to go a little bit more into BanQu at early stage.
Got it.
So the question would be, launching a business is an emotional roller coaster experience, I presume, even for most entrepreneurs. So can you give like a brief sense of BanQu's launch and going live moments and the business model that you initially adopted and maybe the target market? So a little bit of a sense of what happened then.
To be honest, I've done a couple of startups before, and when we started BanQu, it was extremely different. It was less about markets, or it was less about positioning. It was a very simple thing that we anchored in. And as we start bringing on people, it's like, look, we want to build a platform that will enable data democracy, so that mother farmer can never, ever be refused a bank account, right? So everything else had to be tied to that, right? So for us, it was probably extremely different, at least for me personally, very different from my other startups. Because other startups, right, you have some sort of method to your madness where you say, whereas with this case, it was none of that mattered, right? The PowerPoints didn't matter, the website didn't matter. All mattered was that how fast can I build a piece of software where that mother or that refugee can get a digital receipt that proves their existence, right? So everything else, then we said, so, that's kind of we started. And in the initial, honestly, in 2016, where we had zero on both sides. So we measured two things as KPIs, right? Our board holds us accountable for two things. It's the revenue, recurring revenue, because we're a software company, and people in the last mile, first mile. And obviously in 2016, the number was zero on both sides. But the pivotal moment, honestly, in 2016 was when we came up with the first beta, right? It was like super basic, and we were using blockchain, right? So this is kind of where maybe a little bit different. A lot of people were saying you should use Bitcoin blockchain, and day one I said no, we're not going to touch crypto, not because anything against. I never lost focus that every day that I wake up, I work for that mother. Right. So if anything we do, if that mother can't actually move forward, then we're not going to touch it. And that's how we ruled out the currency aspect, like literally in 30 seconds, because I knew there's no mother on the Zambia-Congo border who's going to take a Bitcoin, right? At least, now it might change in the future. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of examples in Argentina. This is 2016. So when we came up with the first beta, we tested it with the refugees in Kenya, and Hamza was in the camps, and I went to the camps, and we tested for about 6 months, like just a basic. And we went to the slums of Kenya where there are a lot of refugees, and we tested this basic premise, which is, if you are that refugee, and if you went through a training program in a camp or through an NGO, what do you get back, right? You get a paper, right? And that paper can be lost, and your identity is non-existent. So what we tested with our platform was kind of the basic construct that you have people, which is kind of refugees or farmers. You have organizations, couldn't be brands or NGOs or whatever. And in order for them to legitimize each other, you have to trade on an asset, right? So our first beta really had probably the most basic way of connecting people, organizations, and assets. And it was this aha moment where we realized, wait a minute, everything in the world, no matter what you do, is a concert, a well-synchronized concert, if it's going well, between people, organizations, and assets. So if you're a refugee and you took a English class in a camp or with a NGO, then you are rightfully owed a digital record that you have that certificate. And that was kind of the aha moment, because we talked to a bunch of people who had, for example, come from the UK to the US, and they even couldn't open a bank account. These are wealthy people because their identity in the UK was useless in the US. And that's when we kind of said, aha, I think we are on our way. So that was kind of the big, and then, from 2017, early 2017, we released our version 1. And then, knock on wood, we've just had a steady flow of clients and growth since then.
This pilot in Kenya was quite critical to the product that you developed then.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
The people, organization, and asset was the elements that really put it together.
Right. And it also kind of legitimized the fact that, that refugee does not need to download an app, right? So one thing we do is we deliver all the key transaction information through an SMS message, right? So having lived in Congo and spent some time there, I kind of realized that a lot of people, in my humble opinion, right, is think that people in poverty are illiterate, or poor farmers are illiterate, right? Or poor farmers can't use information. I take offense to that because, in my last 6 years doing this work, I've never met a farmer who said, please don't tell me how much I sold. Don't tell me the price. And for sure, don't tell me what I sold in the past, right? And so, no, I seriously, I get on calls where people will criticize and say, wait a minute, you're throwing all this blockchain technology at people who live in poverty. And I said, wait a minute, that's not what we do. We're meeting people where they are. And I've never met a refugee or a person living in poverty who didn't have SMS phone capabilities, right? And that was the other learning experience, that we decoupled the tech conversation, where now when I sit down with farmers or recyclers, for example, in March, we went live in Colombia with Bavaria, in multiple cities for the recycling, and amazing recyclers living in extreme poverty. And they love the fact that their SMS message guarantees the price of a bottle when they sell it to the co-op, right? No blockchain, no app conversation, right? It's just human to human creating this economic passport that proves, hey, I've been selling 40 bottles a week that then make it into Bavaria's, supply chain. That's all.
That's excellent. Would they be able to have also an aggregate history of that?
100%. Yes. So there are two mechanisms, right? So what they can do, and which is, great examples now everywhere. In fact, this week, we had a really big news where we are now doing direct deposits with the Zambian National Bank, right? And so, for example, the way it works is that even though you just have an SMS phone, because it's blockchain, because it's Ethereum, we store data, right? On chain. So we don't have a secondary database. We're not like our competitors where they're still storing data in a database and then hash to chain. In this case, we store on chain. And that farmer, right, if they don't have a smartphone, they can permission a bank or a brand or an insurance company, say, look me up. And they can credential through a QR code or through a PIN just through their SMS phone. Okay. So that, yeah, and we use 4 words. What it does is that it gives that individual the ability to own, access, monetize, and permission. 4 fundamental words, and that's why a lot of people call us the anti-Facebook, because we don't own data.
Yeah, that's the way it has to be.
Yeah. And one good example in Uganda and Zambia, we've seen now where farmers can prove that they are ABN by farmers, even if they have an SMS phone. And now they can get better access to mobile money, crop insurance, banking services, input financing, and things like that, because you exist.
Exactly. It's a big difference now.
Yes. We call it the economic passport.
The economic passport. I love that word. Yeah. And I was hoping that you would explain what that was. So you have done that pretty well.
And it ties back to 1994, right? Because my economic passport were the 4 pieces of paper that let me open a bank account. Why shouldn't we let that happen today to everybody?
Exactly. It's a representation of that.
Yes.
Accessibility is it's there for the people who never had it before.
Yes.
So